friends, it's Justin. I'm here to bring you a really special interview and just bring a little bit of Shreveport history to life. And I'm sitting out here in front of the Logan mansion. I'm about to go sit down with, well, a wonderful lady named Mrs. Vicky, who's put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in bringing this mansion back to life. But hey, enough standing out here, let's go inside. How y'all doing? It's Justin Logan. I'm here with the beautiful Miss Vicky, the owner of this beautiful Logan mansion. And she was gracious enough to really just sit down and tell us a little bit about it. And I know really we got to start with the history. Right. What is the history of this home? Or I'm sorry, this mansion?
Right. The house was built in 1897 by Lafayette Robert Logan. He was a very wealthy businessman from Virginia. Okay. He had been a colonel in the Confederate Army, and after the Civil War he came west. He was a very wealthy entrepreneur. He built this house to reflect his wealth. He was a beer distributor, worked for Anheuser-Busch, had his own brand of beer.
Oh.
He also had lumber yards in New Orleans and St. Louis. All the woodwork in this house is original. It's never been painted. Every room has a different type of wood.
I've seen that walking through.
And then he also had an ice house business, and that was the era before electricity, when they brought the big chunks of ice to your ice box, and that was very lucrative for him. Logan lived until 1919. He and his wife had no children, so the house was acquired by Wade Hampton. Wade worked for KCS Railroad, which is where my husband worked for 34 years.
Okay.
Wade was a bit of an amateur inventor though, and in 1918 he invented a drill bit that was picked up by the oil industry. He got a $100,000 royalty check in 1918, which computes to well over $1 million.
Okay.
So they became very wealthy overnight, bought the house, moved in, lived very well for 6 or 7 years, but Wade was a gambler.
Oh.
And he lost his fortune by 1926 doing the cockfighting, the roosters that would fight.
Really?
Yes. Now some of the family likes to think that he lost it in the stock market crash. But they did let the servants go in 1926.
Okay.
So they opened a boarding house, lived here until 1952. The boarding house sustained them, and they recovered a lot of their money. Then the house was acquired by the church behind us. They owned it for 20 years. At the end of their run, the house was in terrible disrepair. It had been a homeless shelter, homeless store, and it was going to be torn down by the car dealership next door to us. They were going to tear it down and pour another used car lot.
Oh, wow.
But a local guy named, I can't remember his name, Jim, he got word of what was happening. He was real big into historical preservation. He stopped it, bought the house, and put in KZOZ radio station. This was Cozy, the big radio station in Shreveport, for 30-some years. Then the house sat empty for 6 years, and we bought it.
Okay. I know you kind of got a little lucky on that. Now the woodwork, they didn't paint over.
Right,
that.
they did not.
So that saved a lot of time and
Well, you won't see any home with woodwork like this.
No.
Even the big mansions on Fairfield don't have woodwork like this.
Really, I'll have to try and get in those things next. Now there were certain woods in this house. I know when we were going through, you were saying that you cannot actually get anywhere else.
In the gentleman's parlor, we have curly pine, and that wood has all been harvested.
It's beautiful.
It's
I know
very beautiful. And we have burled walnut. The staircase is mahogany and cherry. It's just all different. It's beautiful. Logan had a lot of money, and he spent it well.
In this house.
Now the house didn't look like this though when we acquired it.
Now, is there any pictures? Now you showed me a couple pictures. Now
we have some pictures of when we purchased it, but it doesn't do it justice. Just how bad it was.
Well, I mean, you would think this house was like this since it was created. I mean, it is beautiful.
When we moved in, we put everything we owned in the front hallway, which is quite large, and filled up this room. And it was 2 years before we emptied this room because we had to completely renovate every room. I personally put up over 500 rolls of wallpaper. Wow. We've replaced all the lights. When we moved in, there was shag carpeting over all the floors. The only lighting in the entire house was the open fluorescent tubes that ran end to end. There were cubicles built in the dining room that my husband took his chainsaw to. Yeah, I mean, people thought we'd lost our mind. They really did. But we had the vision, and this was my dream come true, to live in a house like this.
Well, I proved all those naysayers wrong,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
I'm happy you did, and for you to actually have your doors open for people to come on out.
Well, we've always done that. I enjoy touring old houses, so I think I'm probably the only person that gives such free access to our house.
And well, we thank you, and I know you took me around this. Now, there's something that was kind of talked about, not as much as the house. Now, isn't there a little bit of haunted history out there?
There is, and it's quite substantial.
Oh, okay.
We moved in, and of course, all of our friends said, "Oh, I bet that house is haunted," because it looked horrible. The windows were boarded up, porch posts had fallen in. It was pretty grim, but we didn't believe in that. We had never experienced anything paranormal. We just blew it off. Well, right after we moved in, the front hall was covered in boxes and furniture. My husband comes down the stairs at 5:30 in the morning. I'm the only other person here. And he hears inside of the packing box, music box is playing.
Oh.
Now, it wasn't this particular music box, it was this box. But it's been wound too tight and broken. I've got to get it fixed. This is a box Billy got his sister when he was in Vietnam.
Okay.
We knew it had come back to us, but someone else packed up all of our personal belongings. We hadn't seen this in years. Well, there it was, wound and playing inside the packing box.
Inside of the box.
And we're like, how in the world did that happen? Well, not long after that, we hired 3 painters to touch up the outside. Because it was, and they took their 4 gallons of paint out on the porch. After about 30 minutes, the man that was in charge knocked on the door. When I opened the door, he said, "Do you have a ghost?" I'm like, "What are you smoking out here?" "No, I don't have a ghost." He said that 3 times they came back to all the paint pails and all the lids were off.
Oh.
They put them back on, even sealed up some of them, and all the lids were off.
Handy ghost right there.
Right. So after the 3rd time, they came to the door. Now, we were visited by Rose Hampton Hart. Her grandfather, great-grandfather, owned the house. She came to see us and told us that during the Great Depression, this was a boarding house. After he had lost his money, it was a boarding house. And there was a young family that lived here. And their daughter was between 8 and 10. We don't know their name or their circumstances, but they lived here. One day, the little girl was in the attic and fell out of the front attic window and was killed. After her death, the family started to see the apparition of a young girl on the 3rd floor of the attic and on the 2nd floor. The next 20 years, everyone in the family saw her. So she came and told me that, and I'm like, "Oh, that's nice, Miss Rose." You know, she came to see me twice. Well, then we have a large side door, okay? And all the doors were custom made because there were custom craftsmen here to do it. The door was wider than normal. Took a long time to get a screen door to fit, but we got one, installed it. A couple days later, I go out to water my plants and roses and things like that. But when I come, and it has a hook and eye to lock it. When I came back, I couldn't get in.
Oh.
Long story short, the hook and eye was fully engaged from the inside. And that's the way I went out. So I had to get the spare key, come in the back, everything else was locked, and I'm like, how in the world did this happen? 2 weeks later to the day, the same thing happened. And my husband had flipped and tried to make it fall in there. It was impossible. So I'm thinking, well, maybe Miss Rose was onto something. And we had a lot of other incidents happen too. But then we got our little dog, Jenny, little dachshund. She would lay on the couch by the door and watch the street. If anybody went down her street, she was out the screen door after them. So I'm going upstairs to paint. I walked over, the big door was propped open, locked the door tight, started up the stairs, and on about the 3rd step, I heard the screen door close. So I went over and the screen door was unlocked. So I turned around to the room and I said, "Don't do that. Jenny girl will get out and get run over." I've never had another issue with the door. And we've had lots and lots and lots of paranormal activity since then, but that's what got it started. But we do believe it's the ghost of the little girl who died here.
Well, she's a little mischief, isn't
She was last seen 3 years ago in the attic window by a very reputable source. Now, I get told all kinds of things when you own a house like this.
Oh, yeah.
But I go back to the truth, you know. And I don't have to enhance it. All of these things have happened to us.
That's amazing. And
It is.
it would scare me just a little bit.
No, I'm very comfortable in my home.
I would have to sleep with all the lights on, but personally,
Some
I'm
people do.
I'm not a friend of the dark. And well, that's actually it's a little unsettling for me. But
No,
I mean,
it's
you've
great.
been here long enough, and I mean, it just adds to the mystique.
I love
of
my
it.
house. Nothing's going to run me out.
And I bet there's a lot of creaks though. The house.
Well, it's a 121-year-old house. The floors creak. So many people have been up and down the staircase that it's creaking. My husband tried to tighten it up, but it's kind of free floating, so it'll have to do. It's charm.
Charm, yeah. And every time I heard something, I'll be, oh, what was that?
No.
So now, you talked about there was shag carpet in the house and the restoration of your home, and Now I know the attic is what, 2,000 square feet, right?
Over 2,200.
Over 2,000. So, okay, over 2,200. Okay, and I could just imagine you had to do this to at least two different stories on this.
Right.
What were a lot of the hurdles that you had to do on
Well, the floor plan of the house is exactly as it was the day it was built, which makes this even more unique. Because most houses have had walls blown, things moved, but this is exactly how the house was. So we really just started renovating as far as decorating. We had the house checked, the foundation was not going to move anymore, because we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, you know, this was just a dream of ours. So we've done 90% of the restoration ourselves. We took out acres of carpet, tons of dirt, took down all the old lights, and we just started working in the gentleman's parlor first. Put up the wallpaper. The shutters were here in the house. They're very unique shutters. Most of the windows on the lower level were broken out, so we had to replace all of that. When we finished that room, we started on the dining room. Just took our chainsaw to it and there were cubicles. We took all those out. We didn't redo the kitchen for 7 years because we were working on it. Okay, we did all the downstairs before we started upstairs. And you know, we'd run out of money, and you know, then after we lived here only a year, we got a lot of equity out of the house. Put a new roof on the house, and then we recently put a new roof because of a tornado, so that was good. It's just everything in a house like this is bigger and more expensive. But my husband was able to repair most everything himself.
Well,
so that means a lot.
And that saves you a lot of money, and you learn a lot when you're doing all that. Now,
absolutely.
When we were walking around there was a couple items that found its way back into this house.
Right. The newel post light was not here when we moved in. The fabulous staircase that has turnings like a ship's wheel on it. It's very unique. But we were given a picture by a historian that showed the front hallway in 1897. I said, oh, this is what we need, a light. We looked very, very hard to find, very expensive if you could find them. But through my job as a baton twirling teacher, one of my students, her mother was talking to a store clerk about the Logan Mansion. The store clerk's ex-brother-in-law had the original newel post light to the Logan Mansion. The house had been owned by the church then, and the church gave it to this guy. He had it somewhere in Arkansas. Took me a while to get a phone number to track him down. He didn't want to sell it. I whined and cried. He still didn't want to sell it. Then he called me and offered it to me for a huge amount of money, which we didn't have. So I said, I appreciate it, but I'm going to have to pass. Then he just brought it to the house, said he'd take what I could pay for it.
It was meant to be, right?
It was meant to be. So, and the stained glass window in the dining room was stolen in 1972 before we came. It was gotten from a pawn shop 2 years later by the police. A big picture I have left the house in 1952. And I acquired it back several years ago. So it was kind of the house was meant to be. Come back to its glory, I think. So that's what we've been doing.
It was bringing back what once was there, right?
Exactly, and the way that the house was.
Well, I mean, it is a beautiful house, and I really would like to thank you for sitting down and just telling us about your home and the pleasures, the upkeep, and the heartache, really having to go through and getting it to, its former glory. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming and talking to me.
Well, now I know you do offer tours, correct?
Yes, I do tours by appointment. On the major holidays, I usually will have a tour. But if people just give me a call, my number's on the website, the Logan Mansion, and I'll schedule you and get you in. And you see all 5,000 square feet of the house, plus the attic. We show everything in the house, even the bad parts.
Please give them a call, come out, because my video, just pictures, everything will not do it justice for seeing how beautiful this home is. And I mean, it's basically original for the most part.
It is original.
You can see a lot of work and craftsmanship that you don't find in homes anymore.
Right, that you will not find anywhere else.
So thank you again.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure. And well, y'all have a wonderful day.